Goodfellas was very special. I was looking for something that I could find another way of dealing with genre. And I think really that's what started to get me really interested in it, the characters in the world that it depicted, in a genre that I've kind of felt most comfortable with over the years. There's something about the underworld, has more to do with a kind of a working class or lower working class existence from where I come from. And so it's natural for me.
A lot of his films, and especially with Goodfellas, definitely deal in the underworld. And that's been a recurring theme in a lot of his work. And I think people are attracted to that, but more so the fact that he's always trying to grasp the humanity of these people, the flawed nature of these characters.
When you think of gangster films up to that point, you don't really get a chance to pull back that curtain and see the day-to-day life of these guys. And a Goodfellas, it moves the genre into a new place.
None of us are gangsters to begin with, you know. Marty certainly is not, Robert isn't, and I'm not, and wasn't. We grew up in certain environments, Marty and Robert, as you know, in Little Italy, me in Brooklyn. So the gangster issue is almost a non-issue. We could have been playing doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs. So this was not about the essence of gangsterism, but it took place in the milieu of the gangster. But these were people who were trying to know themselves, find out about themselves, be themselves, as Marty was.
As any actor, not just me or Leo or I think Daniel Day-Lewis would say that they love Marty because he's very easy and encouraging in what it is, and then guides you in what he wants.
You know why it stands the test of time? Because it's truthful.
Marty, who's really a great director, there's just an enthusiasm.
The actors also come from that world. Bob certainly knows that world, and Joe, and I think it lends an authenticity.
Marty is able to surprise you constantly.
Marty never is interested in the villain or the hero. He's interested in where most people are, which is in the middle.
You know, people always say, well, interested in the antagonist in my movies. Well, the point is that they're also human. These are also parts of the negative parts of who they are. Evil streak, so to speak, if you want to use that phrase, is also maybe something in us and something not to be afraid of. But
I saw a documentary he did about his mother and father called Italian American. And I said, oh my God, there is something to be said in that world, like in Goodfellas.
That world is something that deals with very basic conflicts, basic dilemmas, moral dilemmas that I grew up with. And so I feel comfortable with it.
He's told me, and his mother has told me, that if there was going to be a mafia killing on the street, the mothers would all be told, take your children off the street at 3 o'clock, and then they would all come in, and then somebody would be shot, and he would go back out to play again. I think they just reflect aspects of who we are as human beings, and some things we can't deny or pretend they don't exist. That's the idea. That's very dangerous, because if you're teaching younger people, when they suddenly shocked to find out it does exist, no, it exists. You know, I just want to get you prepared. I don't know how it's going to come at you, but it's going to be there, because that's part of who we are.
One of the reasons Goodfellas does work is because there is a sense of comradeship. But these guys, although they're all terrible guys, you will want to hang around with them. And then suddenly, when Joe Pesci kills Spider, they're not so nice. In fact, that's where we had a big fight with Warner's about that. They wanted us to remove the Spider killing. And we had to very forcefully explain to them that scene really changes the audience's attitude about our friends, that up until then, everything is nice. They hang around nightclubs, they got nice girlfriends, they spend money. And it all sounds like Goodfellas are a bunch of really nice guys until the Spider murder. Where you see these really terrible people. But Marty was smart enough to get you hooked early on, so you like him.
We had Henry Hill, we had all those people. We had guys who knew all of these people. And you drink with them and you talk to them, and they were very funny. And they were always trying to put one over on the other one, and always with good spirits. I mean, I gotcha. When you get a guy who has actually been in prison and done bad stuff and is a half a wise guy or a wise guy, that face is different than most faces. You could see it, and Marty sees it too, and he fills movies with that kind of stuff. He can't make it a cliche. He knows everything. He knows if it's a cliche. He looks at an actor and he's like, oh, no, 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 no. I mean, I remember when we cast Goodfellas, we didn't want any old faces.
Henry! Where were you? Why didn't you call? Where have you been? We were worried to death. A married man does not stay out like this. Mom! Normal people don't act like this!
When Marty wanted to cast Ray, I said, why Ray? We could do better. I kept saying, look at other people, let's see who else is out there. And my wife and I were having dinner, and Ray Liotta was in the restaurant, and he came over to my table, and he said, could I see you for a minute and talk to you? I had never met him. And I said, sure. I got up from the dinner table, and we went outside. And he said, look, I know you've been resisting me playing the part. And then he went into a whole spiel about why he should have it. And he convinced me. And I called Marty the next day and said, you know what? I think you're right. Hire him. Marty probably would have beat me up and hired him anyhow, but Ray convinced me.
By the time I grew up, there was $30 billion a year in cargo moving through Idlewild Airport. And believe me, we tried to steal every bit of it.
I was at the Venice Film Festival, and we're on the second floor, overlooking down at the lobby, and there's just tons of people walking around. Just, you know, film festival, everything was busy. But all of a sudden, there was this group of like, it looked 20 people, like, all walking together. And I looked in the middle, I said, oh my God, that's Marty. I gave him a VHS, because it was back in 1986 or 87, gave it to him, just hoping that he would see it. The whole time, it took about a year, I think, from the time that I met him. Then I went and met him again, but we never read, we just talked.
What are you doing? You leaving your car?
Watch, it's a car for me. It's easier than leaving it at a garage and waiting. It's a lot quicker that way. You know what I mean?
Henry was still alive, but Marty didn't want me to meet Henry at all. So I said, okay, well, so I won't. But what I did, I talked with Nick Pileggi, who interviewed Henry. So Nick gave me hours and hours and hours of cassettes to listen to.
You have to talk to the real people, and that's where you get all that attention to detail, that Marty just leaps on. That's what we want, and it just lends a reality to it. And why not? The people you're talking to are the real people. They really did it.
Just give us the fucking money! Huh? I can't.
I would just listen to the cassettes. I would just put it in my mother's car whenever I was driving around. Just listen to Henry, you know, being interviewed by Nick, and it was great doing it, but it was also, Henry, for some reason, he just ate potato chips the whole time while he was listening. And that chomping of the potato chips was kind of like insightful in terms of who he was and how he didn't care, how he was coming across. He was just telling the stories of his life.
Bob found his character in little things, by the watch, the jacket, the tie, the haircut. He feels the character. He knows who the character is, down to whether he's got manicured fingernails or not.
The number one thing with any director, any good director, is you gotta like make people feel that they can try anything. You know, a lot of times, especially in movies, you don't talk about certain things, or you maybe have a table where you'd sit around and talk about the general idea of scenes, or the general idea of the movie, or this and that. But in my experience, so I've done them in every which way, rehearsed, that sometimes you like to leave that until you actually do it.
Bob, at one scene in Goodfellas, when they're having at breakfast, they got the body in the trunk of the car, and Bob was curious. When Jimmy Burke liked ketchup, and so he wanted ketchup on this Italian breakfast. Okay, get Jimmy the ketchup. But Bob was curious, you know, how did he take ketchup out? Did Jimmy do that? Did he do that? Did he do that? How did he do it? And I got a hold of Henry, and he says, when Jimmy used ketchup, how did he do it? He says, oh, he did it that way. And so in the movie, Bob does it that way. And I watched it, I said, ooh, that just gave it an authenticity to detail.
In all the movies that we've done together, there's always humor, even though there are dark sides. But a lot of humor comes out of those ironic sort of dark moments, certain things, especially in movies that Marty makes.
The scene with the mother when they're all having breakfast and they have a dead body in the trunk, you know. There are a lot of very, very funny lines that came out of there. The hoof That's one of the lines when he said, Joe Pesci was just trying to, he couldn't remember the name for a hoof, and the way Bob says the hoof is something everybody remembers. It gets a huge laugh.
We hit the deer in his paw. What do you call it?
The paw.
The paw.
His foot.
The hoof. The hoof got caught in that grill.
Oh.
I gotta hack it off.
Ooh.
Ma, it's a sin. You gotta leave it there, So anyway, I'll bring your knife back after.
Anyway.
Delicious.
Thank you.
There's something about De Niro who understands the humanity of all kinds of people and could really express that. We had similar interests. He knew where I came from. I knew where he came from. He understood the area I grew up in, and I just think that they reflect those dilemmas, those conflicts, that behavior.
I think Maury told his wife everything.
Maury, him? That's when I knew Jimmy was gonna whack Maury. That's how it happens. That's how fast it takes for a guy to get whacked.
What? Where's my fucking drink? I asked you for a drink.
You wanted a drink.
I just asked you for a fucking drink.
No, I thought you said that you were all right, Spider. I thought
You've been doing this all fucking night to me, you motherfucker.
Joe's he's a funny guy. He was just funny in it, just the way that character was and what Joe brings to it.
That scene in I Make You Laugh. I didn't write that. I get credit for that all the time. People want to give me awards. Oh, you wrote that. I never wrote that. Joe made it up. Joe had seen that actually happen because Joe has been around. He's gone in joints. He knows people. He saw some wise guy do that to another wise guy.
You're a funny guy.
What do you mean? You mean the way I talk? What?
It's just, you're just funny. It's the way you tell the story and everything.
Funny how?
When Joe told the story that had happened to him about you're a funny guy, except he was on the receiving end of it, we then improv'd it for a while in rehearsal and then locked it in. And then it would die down, and I said, you really are a funny guy. And then Joe came on, and then we improv'd again, and they kept that.
So Joe does it, of course, is one of the most brilliant things in the movie, and it was all Joe improvising. And of course, a lot of the guys standing around had no idea Joe was going to improvise at that point. So there were a lot of those reactions were absolutely pure.
You know how you tell a story. What?
No, I don't know. You said it. How do I know? You said I'm funny. How the fuck am I funny? What the fuck is so funny about me? Tell me. Tell me what's funny.
Get the fuck out of here, Tommy.
You motherfucker. I almost had him. You stuttering prick, yeah. Frankie, was he shaking?
I couldn't stand him. I thought he was really obnoxious. He kept fidgeting around. You don't mind, do you? It's very annoying.
East Coast women are a whole different type of woman than someone you might find in the Midwest. And Lorraine is she's a very confident person who definitely has her likes and dislikes and opinions, and she's not afraid to let you know it. And I guess maybe that was one of the things. I guess she was modeling it after Karen, Henry's wife.
You got some nerve standing me up. Nobody does that to me. Who the hell do you think you are? Frankie Valli or some kind of big shot?
Lorraine is very, very smart and knows that world. I mean, she grew up, I don't remember, I think she's Brooklyn. She's a Brooklyn girl. And she grew up with those girls. She knows who they are. She knows every one of them. And she knows everything about them.
My favorite thing about Marty was that I came with things. And he never made me feel stupid or embarrassed of an idea or an action. The guys used real money. So I said, well, I want real jewelry. I was like, yeah, I want the real thing. It makes me feel different, better, snazzier. I like that. I ended up wearing white jeans instead of blue jeans because Marty felt there was a huge distinction between mob characters and real life. And I fought a lot with Marty in saying she's 28 years old, she's 32 years old, she's not old school. And so we did a lot of, I did a lot of battling for Karen.
I think she was able to just channel into that character brilliantly. I mean, it's an amazing performance.
I really kind of asked Marty to put my kids in the movie because I'd worked so hard I hadn't seen them. And I was like, well, my kids are that age. And it was like, yeah, okay, all right, bring the kids in. I think the only time I really said to myself, oh, what was I thinking, was when I go and ring the doorbells and I'm a little out of control. And I'm dragging Stella, and she's looking at me like, why are you screaming?
Oh, hey. Yeah, look who's here. Look who's here. Hey, what are you doing? What happened?
No, nothing.
I
hit something on the road. Jimmy,
what happened?
My mother acts in them a number of films, particularly in Goodfellas in 1989, 1990. And to her, she perceived it as my son's making a film, and these are my son's friends. It wasn't De Niro, it wasn't Joe Pesci, it wasn't the level of these incredible actors. It was literally my son's friends.
They knew each other very well. You know, Katie had cooked endlessly for them. So they were very comfortable all together. And all Marty does is he just turns his mother on. He says, action, that's it. And then anything goes then between all of them. And we got these wonderful lines. And then at one point, the only direction he gave her was, pick up the painting, Mother. Right. So she picked up the painting, and then she improvised the great lines. Just amazing.
One dog goes one way, and the other dog goes the other way.
One is going east, and the other one is going west. So what?
And this guy's saying, what do you want from me? Guy's got a nice head of white hair. Look how beautiful with the dog. It looks the same.
He would never really direct her. He would just put her in the scene because he knew she was the perfect thing to make Bob and Joe improvise together.
Why don't you get yourself a nice girl?
I get a nice one almost every night, Ma.
Yeah, but get yourself a girl so you could settle down. That's what I mean.
settle down almost every night, but then in the morning I'm free. I love you. I want to be with you. I want to be with you.
I'm not a director who could do a theater piece out of Eugene O'Neill or Shakespeare. There may have been a time I could have, but what is that? Is that my experience, really? And I found it over the years to be more comfortable to be dealing with what I think is something of my experience.
He feels that if you lecture people, if you wag their finger at them and make moralistic sort of sermons, nobody listens. But if you immerse people in the environment and you make them understand why it's attractive to want to be in it, then you make the terrible decision to be in it, and then you pay for it.
If it's three men in a social club having espresso, I know that. I know that. What can I mine that is newer there for me? What can I find that is worth me doing, worth me spending my time on it? I don't know yet. There might be more.
And then there was Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy, and his guys, Frankie the Wop, Freddie No Nose.
What was important about that shot in Goodfellas was that it was like the nostalgia of a world filled with gods. This guy who had been up there with the gods up in Olympus and then was cast down. It's kind of comfortable at times to do stuff that you feel you intrinsically know. What I mean is know at least in terms of body language, dialogue, no dialogue, looks.
Hi, Mom. What do you think? Look at my shoes. Aren't they great?
My God. You look like a gangster.
Well, the clothes are very important to Marty, and the dress parade, as when the actors are brought before him to be checked, he was very obsessed about the collars that the mafia wear, where they're almost closed over the tie. And only his mother and father could actually press those collars properly. So Marty would reject actor after actor who didn't have the right pressed collar, and they would be sent back, and his mother would properly iron it.
He tied my tie every day. The way he wanted the knot was very specific, and I guess from when he was growing up, and every day he would tie my tie and get the knot right.
I think he's very careful to make sure that it's believable. He'll often say to me in dailies, I don't believe beautiful evocation of food. And he loves, for example, very tight shots of keys being put into locks or doorknobs being turned, because they're things that we do 1,000 times a day but aren't ever celebrated in quite that way. They're distilled images, and they have a meaning. They have a real meaning for us, but that we don't even realize because we do them so many times a day. There are incredible shots of the gun, for example, that are incredibly framed and become sort of otherworldly. At one point, the cock on the gun looks like a bird. I mean, it's weird, but Marty was shooting and framing so beautifully, and they're so beautifully lit, that things like that really enhance the power of the scene of the wife holding the gun on her husband because of his infidelity.
Wake up, Henry.
Karen, take it easy.
Do you love her? Do you?
Karen. I love you. You know I love you. Karen.
It all happens in Marty's head. When we were writing, there's that scene where Bob De Niro is standing at the bar with a cigarette, and he's looking at Manny, and he's going to kill him. And you know he's going to kill him. And Marty has this shot, and he gets closer and closer and closer, and Bob's eyes get more wolf-like. It was just the most terrifying picture. And as I'm typing that stuff, because I'm the typist, he says, put in cream, put in cream. I said, what cream? He says, just write down cream. I said, what cream? Who are you talking about? Just put it. Do me a favor, just put it. So I typed in cream. Well, it turns out, while we're typing that scene, he's already listening to the music. So now, I can't interpret that. I can't tell you where that, it's all intuitive. It's all part of whatever comes out of him. Now I look at that scene, and when I see it, it's an amazing scene with that music and that close-up of Bob.
Conway, the De Niro character, he decides at that point, being annoyed by all these people around him asking for their cut of the job, the Lufthansa robbery and all that stuff, why should he give it to anybody? Why shouldn't he just keep it all for himself? The only way to do that is to give his friend, Tommy, Joe Pesci's character, a little sort of nod wink, in a sense. You see that in his eyes, and we shot that, I think, at 32 frames a second or 36 frames, just to get, I don't know. I didn't know what I was going to get, but then when I saw the rushes, I saw that gleam in his eyes, and I synced that to the guitar from Sunshine of Your Love right to that point.
Improvisation is important because it has to be done the right way, and Marty, that gets a certain spontaneity out of everybody. At the same time, he's got to mold it and shape it with some direction. It has a direction, but it also needs his vision, his directing vision in it, in the editing, as besides just on when we're right there.
He's very focused. He's very determined. He knows what he likes. He knows what he doesn't like. That's for sure.
One of the great things about Marty is just an enthusiasm, and he's so contagious and so excited. So to work with somebody who's that excited is just exhilarating. It's a lot of fun, but I had no idea. This was only my 4th movie, so I was still kind of new to me. But the playing pretend, to work with people that are that committed to it is exhilarating. It's a lot of fun.
I try to work with people who really want to do it, people who are really enthusiastic and want to be there. If I'll get there in the morning or something and very tired, and actor says hello, he or she comes up to me and they're all excited about what they're going to do, and that's it. I just suddenly pick up on that and we sail, because you never know what you're going to find.
He's always been like that. That's what makes it fun, because he'll say, yeah, let's try this. Yeah, sure, let's do it. And then he'll think of a way, maybe put a little more emphasis on that, or let's make it cleaner and blah, blah, blah. So that gives you the freedom, if you will, to not be afraid to try certain things. And he'll take it out in the editing if it's not working, or he'll just direct you and say, let's maybe work on this. Let's not use that. Let's just kind of clean it up in a very easy way.
And the lines from Goodfellas are quoted constantly by everybody. All of that humor and that unique way that people speak is really makes the film last.
You know what I feel? I can't believe 25 years have passed. And anybody who gets to my age, they know what I'm talking about. I had no idea that the movie would be received as well as I think it was, you know. When you do the movie, you do it and you have fun with it.
My daughter saw it for the first time. Now, by this time, I'm letting her watch it on her own. I would let her have her own experience, so I'm behind her. So she thinks she's all alone in the room, and she's watching it and watching it, and the kid, and then the voiceover, and then there's more acting, and then it cuts to the first time that you see me, and the voiceover kicks in. And I hear her saying to herself and to the TV, she said, "Oh my gosh, will you shut up already?"
I mean, when Goodfellas opened, it was the opening night, and I'm there, Nora's with me, and Marty is sitting next to me, and Helen's on the, and finally it goes on, and it's Ziegfeld, and we're in black tie, and we're watching it, and I get this elbow. I says, "What? See, we should have cut that scene. He's talking too much." And it's Marty. We're in tuxedos. It's the opening night. You can't do anything. Forget it. Sit back and enjoy it. And he laughed, and we watched the rest of the movie. But even then, on the opening night, he's thinking about how he could play around with it, which Thelma just puts her hands up. She knows that's exactly who he is.
None of us expected, I don't think, that Goodfellas would become such a memorable movie. It's become sometimes so many people's favorite movie. We heard stories 20 years ago that people would go into the video store and they'd be trying to find something for the weekend, and then the mother would say, "Oh, let's just look at Goodfellas." That was wonderful to hear.
I remember being at a craps table, and I don't really know how to play craps, and all of a sudden, you know, the whole table's screaming, "Come on, Karen!" And I'm like, "Karen?" And then I realized, oh my God, all these people are calling me by, you know, Karen Hill. It made me laugh. It's embedded into our culture.
I think the film holds up better now. I mean, at least as well now as it ever has. I mean, it's one of the great films of all time.
Well, it's a world that's created, and then you kind of say, this is not a world I'm really familiar with, but I like.
Goodfellas is one of those movies that whenever it comes on television, there goes my next few hours. I'm absolutely going to watch that. And that's what's so powerful about that movie in particular. And Marty's work for that matter. There's something about the way he connects you as an audience member and envelops you completely into another world that you become entranced by it, and the rest of the world dissolves away, and that's the magic of really making movies.
Well, it's like we're at a party together and we're hanging out. That's basically what this is. We try to get the joy of being with each other, really.